There is comfort in repetitive movement. A yogi would say, I am practicing yoga. Perfection is never the goal. The process and what we learn about ourselves along the way is what matters. Stitching is like that. We carefully select our fabric, choose just the right floss, and we gather our tools, the scissors and needles. Then we take a seat in our favorite chair and begin to stitch. The needle goes into the fabric and comes back out. It goes in and comes back out. Stitch by stitch, we make beauty and find comfort as we stitch. Hey, we're gonna see our FlossTube friends. Look, there's Archie. There's your FlossTube friends, right there. Say hi, FlossTube friends. Always a big yawn. Hi, everybody. This is Archie. I'm Jackie. Welcome to another episode of Comfort Stitching. You didn't get to see him last time, so take a look. Oh, sweet boy. How are you? Nice to see everybody today. Today is Saturday, March 28th, and this is Comfort Stitching, my FlossTube channel, episode number 30. Wonderful to have you here. For those of you who are new, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome to you also. That was Archie. He is a 9-year-old, almost 10, Scottish Terrier, brindle colored. So some of that salt and pepper color he comes by naturally, but I'm sorry to say a lot of it is due to his age too. Facebook chose to show me a photograph of him this week from like right before this time 9 years ago. So right before his first birthday. And he was a lot darker. So still a handsome boy. So yeah, you didn't get to see him last time because I was in a different location. I'm back in my stitching chair in my apartment now. If you are new, like I said, welcome. But I live in Northwest Missouri, a little bit northwest of Kansas City in a little town named Weston. Today is a beautiful spring day. Since I saw you last, Mother Nature has taken us on quite a roller coaster ride. The day after I filmed last, we had whiteout conditions, blizzard. Not a lot of snow accumulated here, thankfully, but due to the high winds, it was just terrible whiteout conditions. And then within just a few days, the temperature rose to 90 plus degrees. Then it froze. We went to freezing again. Then it rose again to maybe what might be normal for this time of year, spring. And then we had more 90s. Now today is a beautiful spring day. The birds are singing. The flowers that didn't get pinched by the freezing temperatures, like the daffodils and forsythia and stuff, some of them have fought back and are blooming. So it's a beautiful day. I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are, if you're having spring or if you're in the early days of autumn, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. I hope you're having a beautiful day. So as I said, it's FlossTube number 30 today. This is a channel mostly about cross stitch. If you haven't been here before, that's what I talk about. That's what FlossTube, if you see that word out there, that's what FlossTubes are, channels where we usually talk about our love and passion for the hobby of cross stitching. Today I have a little bit more to share about beadwork. In my last video, and thank you to everybody who watched and liked that video, and particularly for all of your lovely comments. I showed you, kind of took you on a journey through a hobby business that I had for many years, doing Native American style beadwork. And you guys were so effusive in your compliments, and thank you. it was really wonderful to share all of that with you. I did have some questions, though, afterwards, some people who wanted to kind of know the technique or process of how I did what I did, how I do what I do with beads. So a little bit later today, after my cross-stitch content, we're going to go back there into the studio where I've got some things set up on the table to be able to talk with you more about some of the specifics about that beadwork. So if that's not something that's interesting to you, that's okay. I'm going to do all the cross-stitch content first, and then we'll go talk beads again. I'm looking at my chair that's right over here, just out of the frame. What I have to show you today, I have a fully finished objects that I received in the mail over the past couple of weeks. And I have a couple of new starts and a little bit of Stitchy Kindness and a couple of additions to my supply library, otherwise known as haul. So anyway, let's get into it. Let me look at my notes. I always have notes just because I do have some things that I want to make sure that I tell you. One of them being, in my last video, I announced that next Stitch With Me day that I host at a shop here in Weston called Florilegium. And within just a matter of a few days, that event is full, completely full. I'm even added a couple of people. I'm not sure where we're going to squeeze. It's going to be a cozy event this time. But I also have a few people on a wait list. So I'm sorry for those of you who are maybe just found out about it a little bit late. I am, like I said, completely full. And I thank you so much for your enthusiasm for those events. And they're full because I can only fit about 25, give or take a couple, people into the space where we stitch. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that right off the bat, that for those of you who are coming, I'm so excited to see you. We've got some returning friends who are more local. That was my inspiration for creating the event in the first place, as a gathering for more local stitchers so I could get to know this stitching community. But it's become a little more broad than that, and I've got people that come from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, obviously Missouri, where I live. This time I've got somebody coming from Georgia, somebody from Colorado is coming, and so it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And we have some floss tubers who will be there too. Christine Hollis of Hollis Hands Create finally had some time in her schedule to be able to come. Linnie from the Sable Stitchers will be there. Renee, Prairie Stitcher 515, is going to be there. And I think Krista, the Wildflower Stitcher from Oklahoma, is coming this time. So it's going to be such a fun time, you guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing you. And hopefully if you didn't make it in or have heard me talk about these before and just wondered, should I go? Yeah, you should. In the future, there'll be more. So they're just really fun opportunities to get together with like-minded people, build community, make friendships, and just share our love of stitching. So, and then after I saw you guys last, like the day after when that crazy blizzard conditions was going on, I got to participate in a Zoom call that is hosted by Sarah from the channel Sarah's Stitchy Spot. And first of all, if you're not watching Sarah, what's wrong with you? You need to be watching Sarah. She's wonderful. Such a community builder and does some lovely, lovely stitching. A lot of stitching. She has a variety of things that she stitches too. But she hosts, I think it's once a month, I'm going to say, Zoom. And it's just a very small group of people. I don't think it's ever any more than a dozen. So it's a wonderful opportunity to really be able to talk with the folks who participate in that. And the way that you get invited to that is when she announces when the next Zoom is going to be on her channel. I mean, she announces that. You just have to write in the comments that you want to Zoom with her, and she does random drawing. And what's fun is that Sarah also always has a guest floss tuber. It's always a surprise. And the one that I got to attend last night, I think actually this is probably was the third time I've gotten to Zoom with Sarah. So you can do it more than once. Anyway, the guest floss tuber was Arica from a channel called Fibers and Floss Canada. And it was great to get to meet her. I've watched Arica's channel for quite a while. She recently took a bit of hiatus and now is back, but I have watched her for a while, so it was wonderful to finally get to meet her through the camera, obviously, but kind of in person too. Now, I'm going to put links to Sarah's channel and Arica below. But Arica, if you haven't watched her yet, I would encourage you to give her channel a try. She stitches a variety of things. She's a knitter, she's a multi-crafter, but the things that she stitches are everything from samplers to fancy ladies. She just finished, I believe, a lavender and lace angel that she had started when she was a teenager and finally got that finished. She does, I'm just trying to think what I've seen her talk about. Just really a variety of projects. So I think you would enjoy her. And she does talk about some knitting and other hobbies as well. And then we also had another floss tuber that I had seen one episode of. Her name was Laura, and her channel is called Laura's Craft Room. Now, Laura is another stitcher from Canada, so it was nice to get to meet her. And then the other ladies who were there on the channel, all lovely, lovely people, and we got to share our stitching, what we were working on, and just the opportunity to, again, talk about this hobby that we love. So I would encourage you to sign up for Sarah's Zoom when the opportunity is out there to do it. So then after that, about a week later, I was on another Zoom call, and that is one that was an international group of stitchers. Now, I belong to several Facebook groups, and I know we always kind of give Facebook a bad rap. Any social media has the potential to be a negative and just not a fun place to be. But for stitchers, and if you have a particular passion for a hobby, social media is an excellent way to connect with other people who share your same interests. And Facebook is one of those. Nicola Parkman from Hands Across the Sea Samplers has a couple of Facebook groups. There's a couple of sampler-focused groups. If you love Brenda Gervais or Plum Street or JBW Designs, Judy Whitman has a group. Shellie from Antique Needleworkers has a Facebook group. So there are groups for all of your stitching interests. But, excuse me, there is an international Facebook group called Across the Pond Stitch and Chat. Again, I'll put information below. And it's an international group, and once a month, a couple of the gals who are the moderators there also host a Zoom stitch. That one's about 50 people, and it's just, again, another wonderful opportunity to gather with like-minded folks. But what's fun about that with an international community, you get to see the things that we work on that are similar, and some things that we work on and are interested in that are very different. So that's a lot of fun. And in that group, too, there's a stitch-along going on. Sarah of the channel Sew Me Sarah is hosting a stitch along in there. Some people are working on a Stacy Nash sewing roll, and I'm not participating in that particular stitch along. There's going to be another different stitch along later in the year. It's just a wonderful group very gentle, not overwhelming amount of chat. People share their progress on their projects, and just a great place for support and to ask for advice if you're needing help with your stitching. So again, that information for that will be down below. So then I have also been just stitching. I mentioned in my last video that I'm working on a special project for a friend, and I'm almost done with that. Something that unfortunately I can't share with you at this time. Maybe at another time I can if she gives me permission, but right now it's a personal project for someone else. So, but I have gotten 2 new starts since I saw you last, and like I said, some fully finishes. So let's start with the finishes. So at the solstice of 2024, the winter solstice of 2024, I began kind of a seasonal stitch along with Sarah of Sew Me Sarah. And we did a chart called the Barbara Anna 4 Seasons. And what we did was start one of those 4 girls with each of the official beginnings of the seasons. And so I finished those not long after the autumnal equinox last year, 2025. And after that, at one of my stitch days, I gave them to a finisher to take home and finish for me. Joy, some of you may have heard of Joy. She does a lot of finishing for a lot of folks, most notably Brenda of Brenda and the Cereal Starter. But Joy lives in Kansas City and comes to my stitch days. So Joy took them home, and I said, no pressure to get them done at any particular time. Just do them when you have time in your schedule. And I received them now in the mail about a week and a half ago. So I want to share with you the finishes that Joy did for me. Now I wanted these to end up to be not stand-ups, but done as a sort of just a flat or a tile, if you will, in the nature of the way the Curious Crafters do their tiles. So I could put them on an easel seasonally. So Joy sent them back. Here they all are. I stitched mine on different colors of fabric. So there, 3 of them are different. 2 of them I stitched on the same fabric. The other 2 are different. So since it's spring, I'm going to start you out with the spring one. Here is the finish that Joy made for me of the spring Barbara Anna. Now, I did not ask her to do the arch. That she just did that. I love it. And she finished them with just some coordinating fabric on the back and a little bit of cording on the edge. So here's the spring girl. And here's the summer one. The green and yellow coordinating fabric on the back. Then the autumn one, I stitched on, all of these are on 40 count fabric, by the way. These 2 girls were stitched on a piece of Swan Bay fabric. Can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name. Sorry, I'll put it down here if I can think of it. I'll put the name. This one I do know. That's why I'm thinking, oh, I should tell you that fabric. This one is a piece of, picture this, plus Velt. And it had mottled green and gold. Love the way that one turned out. Rust color on the back. And then the one that I started with, that started it all, but I'll finish with, is this one. This is a piece of Seraphim fabric. It was called Sapphire. Beautiful, deep, deep blue. The white cording on it. So I'm very, very pleased to have these girls now here. and finished, and now I can find an easel and we'll get them on display. I'm thinking I might put one of these back on the top of that shelf right there in my studio, or maybe on the table back there, but I'll find out a place. But anyway, thank you, Joy. I love how these turned out. So sweet. So sweet. And they were so fun to do. So fun, in fact. I mean, fun because they're colorful, and this was the second Barbara Anna project that I did. But I really enjoyed stitching seasonally. Not necessarily about any particular holidays of seasons, but just having a project that fit the season. And so I decided I wanted to do that again. So that was what inspired me for one of my new starts. And I don't know if I talked about this in my last video, because I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but I might have talked about it at the beginning of the year when I was thinking about what some plans for the year might be. I had, some of you have already stitched what I'm going to show you. It was a 4-piece stitch along that was released in last year in Just Cross Stitch magazine. A stitch along called Nature's Journey. And each issue last year had the pieces. I have all of this in a project bag that was a gift to me from a gal named Sarah, who is in Australia, I believe. Australia or New Zealand, I think Australia. Sarah, pardon me if I got that wrong. But anyway, Nature's Journey was a 4-piece stitch along. I'm going to show you the issue that has all 4 bits of it, because you probably remember this if you get this magazine, or maybe you were seeing it last year on social media. But this is the stitch along, Nature's Journey. And they released the first piece in the spring issue last year. So I decided I'm just going to do these sections along with the seasons. And the called for fabric on this was a Bestitch Me fabric called Into the Veil. And I decided, I got a piece of it. I think at one point last year, I was on the Bestitch Me website. I follow their page on Facebook, by the way. So I was seeing that Brandy, the owner, had some fabrics available, and I just thought, well, I'm going to order a piece of Into the Veil and just have that at the ready if and when I decided to stitch this. So I got that. It's a beautiful pale green fabric. I got mine in 46 count linen, however. So my stitching is going to be fairly small. I think the finish ends up being like 9 by 11 on this. So I pulled all of the flosses, all of the called for DMCs, and I'm a bobbinator. Aren't the colors gorgeous? Now these are all for all 4 seasons, so that's why you've got so many different colors here. But I just pulled the ones for the beginning of the sampler and put those on a ring, or the beginning of the project, and put those on a ring. It's not everything because I don't have some of the blues are not on here. But anyway, start of the project. There it is. The top, beautiful flower. I hope it's coming across on screen. There is a, in real life, I know a lot of us say that when we're doing white stitching on an area of our fabric that's light, but in real life you can see that there. I think it's showing there. I love the subtle shading of the pinks there and what that's doing to that beautiful flower. So I did that on the first day of spring. can see it's just that flower in the upper corner right there. And so I just have set myself a goal, similar to what Sarah and I did with our Barbara Anna ladies. Just work on this particular chart, this section of Nature's Journey, until my goal is to have it done by the beginning of summer. So I think I should be able to do that. Doable goals, and that's one of the things I liked about the way we had set that Barbara Anna stitch along up, was that it was a finite amount of time, but an achievable amount of stitching within that time. And so I'm hoping that this will be the same. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So that is Nature's Journey. And the designer on that is Katarina Holen of Sprouting Lupine. And I would think you can, if you don't subscribe to Just Cross Stitch, if you want to stitch this, you can still find back issues of this. And I know that my library carries it, so it might be a way for you to see what the chart is, or like I said, back issues certainly are available on the web. So that is one of my new starts. I'm going to get this all back in the bag. Jingly tag on that. Some of my project bags, I put these little labels. This one, what's making the noise, it has a cute little butterfly added onto that. So kind of jingling. And the second start that I had was one that was market purchase. I think it was market weekend the last time I was here, and everybody was very in high anticipation of what was happening at Nashville Needlework Market, and for all of the people who were attending to be able to finally get the charts that folks had pre-ordered and then get them into their hands so they could start stitching the things that they'd been waiting for. And I only had one thing that I was waiting for, and I received it right after I filmed last. So yes, I got started right away on that too. So this is a project that I'm keeping in a very special project bag that was made for me by Berrie of Stitch Folk. And since I saw you last, I also got a zipper pull for it. Now this is a, you can see it's a big safety pin that has some old antique buttons hanging from it and a little bit of old lace. And this was made for me by Nancy Mills, FiveTimesBlessed on Etsy. I was looking for just the right zipper pull for this bag. And on her Etsy shop, I saw these safety pins full of old buttons, and I asked her if she could make that into a zipper pull. So she made that for me, and I love it so much. I think it goes perfectly with the bag. And the chart that I was waiting impatiently for was this one right here, the Quaker sampler from Kathleen Littleton at Cross Stitch Antiques, called Hannah Whitaker, from Thorne and 1821. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know last year I spent a lot of time working on a Quaker sampler, a Beatrix Potter Quaker. You can see just the tiniest edge of it hanging there in my studio. And anyway, I did a lot of research on Quaker samplers last year. And I feel like I just scratched the surface. And I collected a lot of charts for different Quaker samplers, and I was wondering which one I was going to do next. And when Kathleen showed this one, first I saw it in that international Zoom group I talked about, the Across the Pond. She sometimes joins that, and she was showing it. And when she did, my jaw dropped. And I knew I had to have it. At that point, it wasn't released yet. It had been shared with some folks that were at a retreat at the famous Quaker school called Ackworth School in England. It was shared with those participants of that retreat last fall. And I just was right on the instant messaging to Kathleen and said, "When's this coming out?" And when she told me it was potentially a market release, I was just waiting for this one. In fact, Kathleen would probably tell you I was annoying about it, asking her when. So anyway, here she is. And yes, I got started. I got the called for threads. The thread list was shared on social media with everyone, and I got the called for threads. So I had them at the ready. These are some of them. And I found out what the called for fabric was. I had a piece of that. It's called for 46 count antique lace by Seraphim, but I chose not to use that. I decided on a different fabric that I really liked the look of, that I had in my stash, and that was a piece of 46 count Dirty Porcelain by Roxy Floss Co. Dirty Porcelain. And this is what that looks like. I kind of thought it matched. In a way, it looked kind of like the antique, I thought. And so I have a start on Hannah. Started up in the top with the very center. And got the first whole motif in and the beginning of a second one. Now I will tell you, I changed colors already. Poor Kathleen, she knows that I most likely will change colors, and in fact, she's joking with me about it now. But the called for color for the majority of the motifs that are around the outside border, that was going to ghost on my fabric. So one of the pitfalls of changing your fabric is that sometimes the called for colors are just not going to work. So therefore you have to be willing to make some adjustments. So I did. And if you've been here, you know that conversions are us here on Comfort Stitching. Conversions are us. I don't have a problem changing colors at all. In fact, I do it probably far more frequently than many of you would like. Now, I also will follow called for colors if I like them. Like, I'm not changing anything on Nature's Journey. Why would I? They're gorgeous. But with a sampler, I've come to realize that part of my process of getting into the sampler and sort of making it my own separately from just the stitching is to really kind of fine tune and participate in choosing the colors for it. Now, whether that's just the kitting up process, I'm one of those people who does love to kit things up. So that's part of it. But if a color, for whatever reason, is just not working for me, whether that's an instinctive, like, don't like that color, or, oh my goodness, that color just is not going to work on this fabric because it's going to fade away too much, or there's a weird contrast that's causing just some issues because I changed the linen color. I'm going to change a floss color. And what I did with this one is first I looked at and pulled all of the DMC colors. And the reason I went with the DMC is, pulled those DMCs, is because of some experience I had with my friend Ray Niles of Red Barn Samplers. She's also a sampler reproductionist, and last spring, I went down to her home near Wichita for a weekend just to hang out with her. And while I was there, she was showing me, of course, through her antique sampler collection. And she had one that she was starting to prepare basically for charting, and it was going to be something that was she was going to be coming out with. I think it was for a future retreat, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, she wanted me to help her pick the colors. And so it was really fun to be pulled into what that's like from a designer perspective. How do you do that? And this particular sampler hadn't seen a lot of sunlight in its life. It was an older one. It was from the mid-1800s, I think. The colors on the front of it were still fairly vibrant. There were a few areas of fading that were apparent, some thread loss due to age, but just based on time, there was color loss. I mean, from the mid-1800s, so, you know, it's coming on 150 years old, and there's going to naturally be some color loss. And so what we did was we were looking at, in the process of choosing those colors, we were looking at the back and seeing what the colors likely started as, and looking at the front and seeing what they were now, and that was 2025 when we did that. And like I said, some of the areas were approximately the same, some of it was different. And since DMC floss is so readily available to everybody, I think most designers will do a DMC conversion and just kind of start there. And so that's what we did in the process of coming up with the colors for that particular sampler that Ray was having me help her with. And there's also a pretty broad spectrum of colors in the DMC floss range. And she had a full, complete master set. So we just pulled thread, laid it down, pulled other threads, laid them down for the back, for the front. And for that particular sampler, what we arrived at was kind of a range of colors that were kind of a midpoint between the front and the back. So not 100% accurate to the front, not 100% accurate to the back, although close, but a good representation of that particular sampler. So with that knowledge filed away in my head, the other thing we did before I move on is we also, for Ray, did a overdyed floss conversion for that particular sampler, and 103 of Arica 103 silk conversion, because there are people who love DMC, stitching with DMC. That's what they want to do. It's affordable. Why not? Some people love to stitch with silks, and so she wanted to offer a silk conversion. And some people love their overdyed floss, cotton floss. So we did conversions for a variety of them. And we didn't do a one-to-one conversion, like look at other pre-selected conversion charts. We picked, I think this is the way that Nicola Parkman does this too, is we picked the silk that matched the antique. We picked the overdyed floss that matched the antique. We picked the DMC that matched the antique. Not one to the other, but what worked best for the antique. So now with that experience is how I approached what I'm doing with Hannah. I went to Kathleen's DMC list and pulled all of those out of my DMC collection. I had them all, and I did find on here, and I've got a message into Kathleen to clarify this. She has 2 symbols with the same DMC color listed, so I've got a message into Kathleen to clarify that. And once I know that, of course, it will be shared, and I'm sure Kathleen will too. But I pulled all the DMCs, and then I compared and contrasted them with the overdyed silk, which is what I ordered, her silk conversion. And some of them I'm sticking with because they work, and some of them I'm going to change. And it's either because I feel like the color is going to ghost on my fabric, or that I might want something slightly different. And so what I've got on my ring here are the colors that I'm definitely going to be using. Like I said, the main color though changed, and it was called for Honey Bronze, a Gloriana Honey Bronze. But to work, that color was not going to work. A lot of my skeins had a lot of lighter variegation in them, and that lighter variegation was almost the color of my fabric. So I had to toss that out. And when I pulled the DMC 167, I happened to have a dinky dye color that was pretty close. In this light, it's slightly more gold, but in real life, it's pretty close. And that is a dinky dye silk called Kobar. So that's what I'm changing that to. And I like how that's stitching up. Love the color. Let me get it turned the right way. So that is Kobar. It's coming across a little green. But again, that's kind of you have to also take into consideration when you put your floss on your linen, the 2 of them contribute to each other. And how does your floss look on the linen? And so I think these others look good on there. My favorite color in the bunch is this light blue that's going to be the water around the swan. I've changed, maybe I see a couple of silken colors that I've put in here. This rust I switched. This dark red I have switched. I just happen to have those colors in my stash. And I have a Vicki Clayton Superfine silk that I'm going to use for the over 1 stitching. So these are the colors I'm going to be using. And then these are the ones that I'm going to find alternates for. So I got some searching to do. They're not colors I had in my stash. I have access to Thread Gatherer silken colors at the shop Flora Legion that's downstairs from me. So I'm going to take all of this and go look at what they've got. And hopefully I'll find what works. If not, I will wait. I mean, the main color I needed was the motifs for the outside to get started. I have that, and the rest will come along. And again, it's just me and my process wants the colors. I'm kind of like Goldilocks. I want it to be just right, just right. So I'm going to do a little tweaking of colors. And like I said, Kathleen knows this about me. We have now, it's kind of a joke between us of how long will it take me before I start changing colors. And so this time, not long. But also, I think I told you guys that I'm going to the attic in May for the Bristol workshop this year. There's going to be a Quaker component to that workshop. And so I'll be able to go to the attic and stand in front of their wall of silk. And they've got all of the brands there. They've got Gloriana, Belsois, Dinky Dyes, Gum Nuts. And I should be able to find what I need amongst all of that. And this is actually fun for me. I know it's probably torture for some people. You just want the colors and you want it to be given to you and you want to just stitch. But for me, what I've realized, and I've been stitching now, come back to stitching since 2023. I love stitching reproductions of antique samplers. Love stitching other stuff too. But when I'm working on a reproduction of an antique, the process of the whole thing is what I enjoy. And by that I mean all of it, the process of all of it. A reproduction sampler is a personality, a person that I'm connecting with. This was done by someone named Hannah Thorne. Hannah chose some colors. And this is the antique here. Kathleen charted from the reverse because there was a dramatic difference between them. So this is what Hannah, ideally, what we might surmise is that's the way it looked for Hannah when she was stitching it. I want to get into that personality. That's what I've realized that I love about samplers. And since this one attracted me so much, it drew me in a similar way to reproduction that I did for a chart called Bridget Power 1840. If you go back, it was 2024 when I did that one, mostly into 2025. That one was a journey for me, as I expect this one to be too. Because I love to try and get to know the person who originally stitched this. Who was Hannah Whitaker? What was her life like in the 1820s when this was being stitched? What was the town of Thorne? What about that? Now, it's this chart, Kathleen, of course, as many reproductionists do, they try and find out if they can who the person was. And there's a bit of information on the back about who Hannah could have been. It says right on here, it's an Ackworth Quaker style sampler. So Kathleen was not able to find anything that definitively connected Hannah to the Ackworth school, but there are enough similarities in the motifs that there might be a connection to Ackworth. The town of Thorne is, I think, if I recall correctly, about 20 miles or so from Ackworth. And in the research that Kathleen shares with us, there were two potential Hannahs that she found that this could have been stitched by, who were from that area. One was a child, and one was actually an adult. And that one, the adult, makes a lot more sense to me, just simply because this is a rather sophisticated sampler, I think. Now, I know there were some girls in England and other countries that were stitching some amazing stuff when they were young, but something about this feels adult to me. So I want to read to you a little bit what Kathleen has to share here, because, you know, history is what I share, what helps me with these two, what gets me into this too. It says, discovering the identity of the stitcher of a sampler over 200 years old is rarely a definitive pursuit. Clues in the sampler can offer direction. The first indicator is the style of the sampler. A polychrome medallion in the style of the well-known Ackworth Quaker school in Pontefract, England. However, a close search of records of students attending during the 100-year period of the opening of the school from 1779 through 1879 indicates that no Hannah Whitaker attended there as a student. While researching the Ackworth School itself, however, a document entitled Ackworth in 1822 was from the Baines Directory of West Riding. A person by the name of Robert Whitaker is named as having immediate management of the academy, and he fills the office of superintendent. Following this clue in ancestry records, one discovers that Robert's wife is named Hannah. Could this be the Hannah Whitaker who stitched this sampler so beautifully in 1821? Records indicate Robert Whitaker married Hannah Dumbleton on March 19, 1812, in Ackworth, Yorkshire, England. The marriage record indicating Robert as employed as a superintendent of the Ackworth Academy, and both parties being members of the monthly meeting of the Society of Friends of Pontefract. Now, the Society of Friends are the Quakers, if you are unfamiliar with that. And this certainly places Hannah in a close relationship to Ackworth School during the year 1821. But what of the town name Thorne stitched on the sampler? Land tax records indicate that Robert's father owned land in Thorne, about 26 miles distance from Ackworth, where perhaps the couple dwelled. If this is indeed our Hannah, she was born on June 12, 1772, and would have been 49 years of age when she stitched this gorgeous and masterfully executed sampler in 1821. Surely she was influenced by the needlework being taught and executed at Ackworth School. Of that we can be certain. Another possible Hannah was born on March 26, 1808, which would make her 13 when this sampler was stitched. She was born in Thorne. Her father was John, and her mother was also Hannah Avey, who had 5 children. Unfortunately, no further information about that Hannah could be found, or why she stitched Ackworth-style motifs on the exquisite sampler, especially as that particular Hannah was of the Church of England and not Quaker. So history has yet to reveal any answers on this. So that's what Kathleen was able to find out. And you know me, kind of like a detective, and this sampler is going to take a while to do. I mean, it's a big girl, as we like to say. On 46 count fabric, this is nearly 13 inches wide by nearly 20 inches high on 46 count. So it's a good size, and there's mostly cross stitch over 2, some over 1 in the inscription in her name, for those of you thinking about this. And it will fit on a fat quarter of 46 count. And 46 count is kind of my favorite count right now. But anyway, I hope to delve into who might Hannah have been. If she was that adult stitching this, that's kind of a rarity that we find in adult stitching our samplers anymore. Generally, we think of them as all being done by younger girls, sometimes boys. But anyway, I'm looking forward to delving into this and sharing the process with you. One more time on this. This is 46 count. This is Dinky Dye's Cobar 1 floss over 2 linen threads. My Nature's Journey is 46 count also, 1 floss, DMC floss over 2. And yes, you can use overdyed floss DMC on 46 count. I know some people think it gets a little bit too full. I love how the stitches look. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't use a certain kind of floss on a certain kind of fabric. If you like the look of it, you use it. I mean, I wouldn't recommend pearl cotton on 46 count, but yeah, you can use overdyed silk, overdyed cotton, DMC, whatever you want to do. So that's where I am with Hannah Whitaker, and I'm really excited to go on this stitching journey and see what I might find out more about the Aqua School, find out more about that area of England. I think it'll be fun. So I hope you'll join me for that. So that is my stitching that I can share with you. So I did get a little bit of additions to my supply library. I picked up just a few skeins of DMC that I needed for that nature's journey, and no necessarily reason to show you those, but I got some linen since I saw you last. I actually belong to 2 Linen of the Month clubs. One is Color and Cotton. That Linen of the Month club came. This is a gorgeous, warm, smoky gray. In fact, it's called Wood Smoke. Gorgeous color. It's got a little bit more warmth. I don't know if you can see, I'm almost seeing yellow there, but it's a warm gray. This is 40 count I get from Color and Cotton. They didn't have a 46 count option, or I might have done that, but I love this color. I'm looking forward to finding something to stitch on that. Beautiful, sumptuous color. I'm a linen junkie, I have decided, so maybe some of you are too. And the next linen I got was my first shipment from Marie at Swan Bay Fabrics. Now, Swan Bay Fabrics is a newer linen company. They're UK based. Marie and her husband Gunter are from Wales, and I know Marie from the Stitch Across the Pond group, and she started a linen dyeing business. Gorgeous linens. If you haven't tried it yet, I urge you to. But she has a Linen of the Month club, and I believe she has spots available in her club. They come and go. It's the kind of thing where you can get it if you want to. You don't have to. But I got in on hers, and she does offer Aida and linen, and she does offer linen up to 56 count. I got 46. This is the Linen of the Month color. I guess both of those were in the gray phase, the Color and Cotton. This is the Linen of the Month for February. And it's a beautiful, beautiful kind of bluey gray. There's a little bit of a very slight green in it. It's a gorgeous color. And Marie, bless her, also sent me another piece just as a gift to me. This was the December color that was named Dashwood. It's a neutral, but it's got a little bit of pink to it. And Marie gifted that to me. So thank you, Marie. Thank you, Color and Cotton ladies, and all of you linen dyers out there. Evertote made the Roxy Floss did the dirty porcelain that I'm using for Hannah Whitaker. Stitch Me, what I'm using for the Nature's Journey, and all of the others I'm using for various projects. Fiber on a Whim, Seraphim. I can't even think of all of the ones that I have going, but Fox and Rabbit is a very popular linen dyer. There's just some gorgeous, gorgeous linens out there. I wish I had some of every color, every one of them I would have. And who knows, I may yet, because I can't seem to stop buying linen. But those are some beautiful linens. And one of the cool things that Marie does, the Swan Bay Fabrics, is she sends this card along with hers that kind of give you some inspiration for some potential uses for this month's colors. She picked some, in this case, some ideas from Reflet de Soie charts. Also kind of, she's stitching a Hands Across the Sea sampler on hers. Maria Wales Newsom, Hands Across the Sea. There's a stitch along going on for that. Maria's doing hers. But anyway, I encourage you to look at Swan Bay Fabrics, because you won't go wrong if you decide to try some of her fabrics too. Just beautiful, beautiful fabrics. And then I got a bit of Stitchy Kindness in the mail since I've seen you last too. And this was, it's another Quaker chart. I had seen a couple of people showing this chart. And whenever I see something more than once, twice, maybe 3 times, I am on it. There's something there for me, is how my intuition interprets that. And that chart is this one right here, called the Ackworth Friendship Book. And this is by a company called With My Needle. And that is an original design by the designer, Ellen Chester is who has that company. And Ellen has reached out to me 2 or 3 times since I've had my channel about different things. So I am so appreciative for the different information that Ellen has shared with me. She's helped me research some things. But I had reached out to her when I first saw this. Michelle, Mama Loves You GB, is working on this right now. And Kathleen Littleton is working on it too. She was showing this in one of those Across the Pond Zooms, was talking about it. And I reached out to Ellen, first researched it online. You can get it at a variety of places. 123 Stitch had it. But since I knew I was going to be going to the attic, and I reached out to Ellen just to say, hey, are you going to the Quaker retreat, first of all? And secondly, do you know if they have it at the attic? Because if so, I would get it there. And sadly, she was not going. But she said, you know what? I'm going to gift you that chart. So anyway, this was a lovely, lovely bit of Stitchy Kindness from Ellen. She sent me a beautiful card and this chart, and how she kind of recommends it being stitched is have, you know, it says it's a friendship book, and the common Quaker way of doing a motif there, putting a token of friendship or a token of love for a friend. Anyway, she recommends that you have friends stitch each of the pages for this. And I may or may not do that. I don't know. I might. I'm thinking of a couple of people of my friends who might be into doing that with me. But not only did Ellen gift this to me, but she sent me an extra one to give away. So I have a giveaway for you today. So if you are interested in this Ackworth Friendship Book, please leave a comment below using the keyword friendship if you would like to receive that. Now, for a giveaway, we of course want you to be 18 because I will need your physical address to be able to mail this to you. But please be 18 or above. Be a subscriber. Please like the video. And next time I will use the random comment generator. If you use the word friendship in your comment, you might receive one of these for yourself. So once again, I want to thank Ellen for sharing that chart with me and with you also. So that's my stitching. So next I'm going to regroup and go into my studio to table in there, and we're going to talk a little bit more about beadwork. So I hope you'll stick around for that. If not, I want to thank you for being here with me today. As always, I appreciate you and look forward to seeing you again soon. So switching gears, switching locations. I'll see you there at the table. All right, I'm back. You are now in my art studio. Oh, my glasses look really crooked for some reason in this angle. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, welcome to Jackie's art studio. I don't stitch in here per se. I do make stuff in here. But when I was doing beadwork, I did definitely do beadwork in here because I need the lights, and I do have overhead lights on in here. But I needed the lights, and I needed a place to put all of my beads out when I was doing that. So I'm going to move the camera just a little bit around so you can kind of get a sense of the space. Behind me, sorry, I'm moving some things in front of me too. Behind me is this bookcase. You can kind of see there's a bit of an altar up there. And right below that, on the shelf below that, are a bunch of colored pencils. That was leftovers from my years of working with Mary Engelbright. And I've got some sewing boxes there. And as you get farther down, the bottom two shelves are covered with other like plastic totes of a variety of other supplies. A lot of it is my beads. They're all in plastic totes. And then other stitchy supplies, my boxes of DMC bobbins and that kind of stuff. And so, and then I also have a bookshelf. Okay, I'm on just a little bit of a tripod. I'm going to try and do a complete. There's the living room. There's where we just were. This is also a bit of a pantry in here, but there's my, oh, there's the ironing board making it in. Bookshelf of books. Trying not to make you too dizzy by moving this. And then here we are on my stitching table, and then here is what you usually see from the stitching chair. So I'm here because, like I said earlier when I was starting out my video today, I had some people asking me about the process of doing beadwork. Now here you see that suitcase that I showed you. Sorry, that's not very attractive, but you know, we all have that place, right, where we have to keep the step stool and some of the other things out of the way. But anyway, I had some people asking me just like, how did you do that? You know, what are those beads sewn onto? What was the process of doing that? So I just thought I would talk a little bit about that, and I hope you might find it interesting. I personally find process and technique interesting no matter what the craft is. It's like you see the end result of so many things, but what does it take to create that thing? So first of all of the beadwork that I do, with the exception of, if you watch the last video, with the exception of that vest, which was, the beads were sewn to fabric. That was linen fabric that I put an interfacing in to stabilize it, but that was fabric. But anything else that I made and showed you, what I sewed the beads to was leather. Now, leather, as most of us know it, is like this right here. It has a kind of a sheen to it. It's very smooth and like buttery soft, and of course a suede side to it too. This is a traditional, like commercially tanned piece of leather. It's very stretchy, as you can see. And this is not the kind of leather that I use to do my beadwork on. I use what's called brain tanned leather, or the natural, some places will call it native tanned or Indian tanned leather, but it's brain tanned. And that is literally what I just said. So the Native Americans, when they would hunt, and when they were clothing themselves with leather, their leather was used for their dwellings and for a variety of things. All leather has to be preserved, and the method of preserving it was by using the brains of the animal. So of course, once you take the skin off of the animal, in order to preserve that, you have to scrape the hair off, you have to scrape any remaining muscle tissue and connective tissue so that the hide is completely clean of the organic material. And then it has to be preserved. And it is said that the brains of one animal are enough to preserve the hide of that same animal. And those brains are rubbed into it. The hide is stretched on a frame. The brains are rubbed into it. Generally, the hide is placed around a framework that sits over a fire, and it is smoked. And that is part of the preservation process as well. So that's the type of leather that I use. And I've got a few pieces here, and I have them here for a couple of different reasons. But to compare and contrast, this is the commercially tanned, smooth, shiny side and a suede side. This is a piece of brain tanned leather, not as stretchy at all, although it does have a little stretch to it, depending on if you get it on the bias. There's a little stretch showing up, and this right here is obviously at the edge of the hide. It's a much thinner, if you could feel it, it's a much thinner place. Here it's thicker. You can see that there's a thickness to this, and doesn't have the same stretch. Now this doesn't have a smooth, shiny side like this, but it does have an obvious shiny side. Here would be where the hair once was. This would be the inside. This has an obvious front and back too, once you know what to look for. You can see some veining here, and it is a different texture. This is what would have been the inside of the animal, and this is the outside. You're gonna see the scars, different. This one has been smoked, and so it's a little slightly organic. It almost reminds me of mottled linen, the way that the hide will draw in the smoke and change its color. This is also a piece of brain tan hide. I think these are all deer hides, but depending on the age of the deer and how it was tanned, it might be a different thickness. Here's some stitched up a hole. This one is not quite as smooth as the other one. It's a different color, so it didn't spend as much time over a fire, not as much smoke. If you could smell this right now, it's like I'm right next to a campfire. And then I brought this one out too. Look at how dark brown that one is. That one has spent a lot more time over the smoker. And by time, I don't think it's like days. It's a matter of hours how long these things go over the smoker. But this is the inside of the animal. That's the outside of the animal. This hide I got I knew someone who had it, and I was wanting to support his business. I probably had an idea for something to make with it. It's a lot darker in person than I thought it was going to be. I just haven't made anything on it yet. But again, it's kind of similar to our linens. Like, you know, it's an organic process, the smoking and the tanning, and each one is individual and unique. So this is this particular piece is the same hide that everything that I used to make this suitcase came from. This is just a remnant of that. And then I wanted to show you too a piece of beadwork that I didn't have when I did my little beadwork parade. I have here a pair of gloves that I made for a friend of mine. You can see the thistle and shamrock. These are in the style of those gauntlet gloves. They were called gauntlet gloves that the fancy rodeo cowboys wear. And I made these from scratch. I didn't just do the beadwork. I made the whole glove and sewed it all together. And I made these for a friend of mine. They're lined also. There is stiff interfacing in that panel that the beads are sewn on. But I made it for a friend of mine who's a singer, and she sings primarily Celtic and American folk music, but she has a real love for the American West. And she came out with a CD, this was back in 2000. The CD was called The Border of Heaven. Her name's Connie Dover. And I also did graphic design for her, and I designed the booklet. This is back in the days when CDs were it, and the booklets had all of the information about the inspiration and the words to each of the songs. But anyway, we used those gloves inside the CD case. So your CD would have been here. So when you opened up your CD, this is what you got to see. So, and those I made back in, I looked in here, I put a label in here, thankfully, 1999, I did that. And that would have actually been right before, probably, I finished them probably right before I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, and that was in the end of 99 into the beginning of 2000. So anyway, I made these then. This was for my friend who sings Celtic music. So the thistle and the shamrock in the style of something for the American West. And my friend keeps them now. And I thought these would be a good also example to show you of the leather with the beads stitched right on it. These are some gold faceted steel cut beads. I don't think I have it. The pink ones are antique beads. The rest are just probably from the 90s. So I guess we'd consider those vintage now, right? And that is some of that brain tan leather. And they smell too a little bit. They still smell a little of smoke. And what's kind of fun about this too is you can see different textures here. These green beads are a satin finish bead. The rest are opaque. And then these blue ones kind of sparkle. They're a cut bead. They have a facet ground onto one edge of them. So as I was sewing them down, depending on how they laid, they're picking up some sparkle. And then these yellow ones here are kind of a translucent. They're called a greasy. That's how they're referred to. When you buy them, they're a greasy yellow color. And that's a common older color that was used in antique beadwork a lot. So anyway, those were the gloves that I made for my friend. And so the process by which I did something like this is called applique style beadwork. So you're starting with your ground cloth or leather, and some people draw their design on a piece of paper and lay it on top of the leather and stitch right through the paper. And I drew my designs right directly on the leather with this type of water-soluble quilt marker that is commonly used by quilters. And it does come off. You can get brain tan leather wet and not worry about it changing the texture or staining it or shrinking it or anything. It's meant to be worn. I mean, the Indians wore it in any kind of weather, and it would get wet, it would get dirty. It's cleanable. I wouldn't throw it in the washing machine, but you can clean it too. And so the beads are sewn directly to the leather. Now, in early times, before thread and needles, the fiber used to sew them down would have been sinew that was taken off of generally the back of a bison or other animal. And I have some sinew here. This is what it looks like if you purchase it. You can see the texture. This is just the tendon from, I think this is bison. I don't quite remember, I've had it for so long. But you can also see that it has distinct fibers. And so if you dampen this, those fibers will separate. And I have some of those here. You can see they're short. You would be using a lot of short lengths, but this is how it separates into different fibers. And I might even be able to separate this down more finely. I'm just gonna say I don't enjoy stitching with this, but I have it because for a while I was in contact with a guy in Taos, New Mexico, who does restoration of Native American beadwork for museums. And when you do that kind of thing, you're restoring antiques, you need to use materials that are the kind of thing that would have been used in the original piece of beadwork. And a lot of that in very early beadwork would have been sinew sewn. And I do have a piece here that I did all with sinew. He gave me a couple of small pieces of, this is old, would be considered antique brain tan leather that he had. Not sure where he collected it, but he told me this was old. And then I did this. It was going to be an amulet. But this is all sewn with, the beads are all sewn down with the sinew. And I did use a needle. Now, before the advent of needles, it would have been a sharpened bone that you would have just poked, not with an eye in it, probably like a needle as we know it, but you would have poked a hole, put your sinew in. It's kind of stiff, so you would soften it with your teeth, and spit, but mostly you wanted that stiffness so you could poke through the hole that your awl made. But you can see on the back all of my stitches here. So those are stitched right to the leather. And then more specifically how this is done is that you thread a line of the beads onto your sinew, and you might even lay out like the full length, say, of this light blue, for instance, and they're loose, and then with another thread you kind of couch down in between each, I was looking at this to see if I could tell, each 3 beads probably. And if you're working on a curve, you're going to stitch down maybe even between every bead in order to secure that curve and get the beads to stay in the shape that you want. But anyway, that's how that was done. For doing this suitcase, this was, it's a 3-dimensional piece. I didn't do it all with one piece of leather. Every side and these 2 pieces were all individual. So how I did this was I kind of made a template of the suitcase, and then I just laid it down on some paper and drew around it, because this suitcase is an antique also, and so it was distorted slightly from age. And so I just laid each side flat on some paper and drew around it with a pencil and kind of smoothed out the edges. And then I made a prototype out of just felt. This is my prototype. I saved it. Obviously I didn't have enough felt of all one color, but I just sewed it together. It kind of makes a sleeve that then the bag would have, you know, this is the bottom right here. The bag sat down in this. And there's some little feet on this bag too. And then anyway, and then these stretched up and over it. I'm just not getting it correct, but that's how I determined the shapes that this would be. So it was in, you know, these two panels were beaded separately. These two were beaded separately. There is leather on the bottom. There's dust on the bottom. And then when I finished all of those individual panels, I sewed these long strips. I probably sewed these panels to the bottom piece. I sewed these long strips to the side pieces and then sewed the bottoms here. Put it around the suitcase, and right up next to that center space, you can see some stitches. It is actually attached to the suitcase along those edges. So it's permanently attached now to the suitcase. I wouldn't be able to take it off unless I snipped all those stitches. So for that, I had to use a much heavier weight needle, obviously, to get through all of that. For the most part, the needles that I use to do this are John James sharps. You used to be able to get them in size 13. I don't think you can get 13s anymore, but you can still get 12s. That's what I used. They have a very, very tiny eye, and they're very fine needles. I don't know if you'll even be able to see it there. There it is. And sewing through brain tan leather is a whole different experience than sewing through a commercially tanned leather. This is almost has, in comparison, it's like sewing through rubber and felt. Although it's not quite as soft as felt, in some areas it is. Watch how quickly that goes through. Just goes right in. This is a thinner area of the hide that just goes right in. This, look, you have to press hard. There's some resistance there, but that'll go into. It's just a whole different experience. Don't recommend. Do recommend. So there are two ways to do applique style beadwork. There's one needle applique and two needle applique. This was all done using two needles, two separate threaded needles, and my gloves. This was done using one needle. I have found I started doing one needle applique, and how you do that is you thread your needle. We got just a piece of felt here. Thread your needle. I drew on it just some lines. You come up at a starting point. It is knotted. I got some big beads here. I put my beads in little jars. You thread on some beads onto, I'm only going to do about 4. These are big ones because I want you to be able to see them. So I'm going to take it down, lay it onto my fabric, and let me see if I can turn this camera down a little bit now so you can see. Okay, I'm loosening the ball. There we go. I've never tried a tutorial before, so I'm sorry if this setup is not totally conducive, but so you just kind of snug these beads up to each other, and they're snugged up to the end. Then one needle, you're going to put this needle right down next to the bead, go all the way through. So they're snug. Then you're going to come back about 2 beads, and I'm coming up right in the center where the thread is. Then I'm going to go back through those first 2 and come out and start the process over. I would add about another, I don't want to go more than 3 or 4 because you don't want to go back terribly far. Start the process over. Snug them up against the ones that you just finished. Go down. Come back 2, at least 2. Come back up in what would be the center, kind of in the center where the thread, the thread center, I mean, and then go back through and you're back. So it starts creating a line. Now that's 1 needle applique. 2 needle applique. I thought I had enough needles threaded here. You need 2 separate threaded needles. Excuse me while I make a couple of knots, or a knot. Okay, about 2 here. So one is going to hold the beads, and one is going to couch them down. So I just drew another line on here, just bringing my needle up through. Now this one you don't have to do just a few beads at a time. It's just however many you want to fill, whatever the area is. Like when I was doing the white, I had quite a long lengths that I could thread beads on, and I just used a variety of white beads to give it some texture. But you could thread quite a lot of them on your base needle at a time and let them come down and get more. And I'm just picking them up from this little jar lid. That's what I like to use to put beads in to keep them contained. Some people dump them out on plates, plastic lids, and but I like them to keep them in the little jars. I use very small beads that are mostly size 13 and above. These are probably size 6, just so you can see them. Okay, so I've got those there. I'm just gonna snug that up. It's not tight, but it's kind of snug now with my thumb holding it down. Then with my second needle, I'm just gonna come up near where about the second one is there. And then just go over the top and come back down between 2 beads. Then I'm gonna go over about 2 more, come up, go back down right between the 2 beads, and continue that way. And this I have found, I started out my beadwork journey doing the 1 needle applique, and the whole suitcase was done with this 2 needle applique. I personally like the end result of the 2 needle better. Some people feel like the threads might have a tendency to get tangled up in each other. They don't. I never had that problem because one's on the top and the other one's on the bottom, so they don't really come in contact with each other. And I just think, for me, my personal preference is my result is a smoother product by using 2. Okay, one last stitch. So that's 2 needle applique. So you can see that the beads are applied right to the ground fabric. And then since I was using these water-soluble markers. That I just got once I was done stitching, I just got a bit of water out and used a fine paintbrush and dabbed at those lines, and they came right off. Because once these are attached, you know, this is kind of fun about beadwork, and I think it probably is the same for stitching if you're a person who does more full coverage, or stitch pieces that have a lot of floss applied to them. It's almost like the fabric and the floss become a wholly new thing. And that's the case with beads. You apply a certain amount of beads to this leather and it starts to take on a very fluid quality. Now this has a lining in it, so it doesn't have that feeling to it. But it's almost like it takes on a new personality when the beads are there. It's become a new thing. It's no longer just separate beads and a separate ground fabric. It's its own thing. And I always loved when that happened. I could tell it was like I was holding something that was completely new in my hands. It was no longer one thing. It had become another thing. It was wonderful. It was like I was bringing something. I've never had kids, but I was like I was bringing something new into the world. It now was its own personality. It had its own thing to say. So that was just fun about doing beadwork. In this particular project, I drew out, like I said, I saved it all because I just thought someday somebody might want to know this, how I did this. So I made templates, as I said, for the sides. I drew everything out because I wasn't sure that this was going to work, this right here, since I had two separate pieces and I needed for these two half circles to fit and come together and visually make one circle when it was complete. I had to plan that. So I also, of course, planned the colors. So this was just my tracing and my layout for that. So I just measured, you know, what the sides were and kind of what the piece had to be shaped like, and planned all that out. And I didn't know until I finished it and put it all together whether or not it was going to work. And I did the same with the sides. I told you I drew, you know, the basic shape to get the basic shape of the leather, but then I drew out in pencil. You can see, yeah, they're very light on here because it's a light. I drew the shapes of the figures. It was a lot of sketching to get to the shapes of the figures. And then how was I going to transfer that to the leather? I ended up making stencils that I cut. This is a long way to do it, but it worked for what I needed it to. I just made stencils and drew around the outside of the stencil. And obviously this one is missing a leg. So probably what I did was cut the leg off to get part of the shape. Like the guys on horseback. The guys on horseback are in a variety of pieces now. So I had them all in one shape first, and then I started, oh, I think this is actually the same guy. I started cutting it apart so I could get some of the details accurately. So that's how I did all of that. And just drew on there. I did these large panels. I did create a frame, kind of like a tambour frame. For those of you who've done that kind of embroidery or know about it, you stretch your piece of fabric on a stable frame so that the fabric stays taut and doesn't shift or stretch while you're stitching. And I felt like this would be best suited to something like that, even though I did back this with some interfacing so that the leather wouldn't stretch. Again, just my experience, I know that over time stitching beads on leather, it does kind of distort, and I didn't want that to happen in any way, shape, or form, since it had to fit this case. So I went and got some stretcher bars, canvas stretcher bars from the hobby store that were in the size that I needed, and I stapled some twill tape to it, and I've got, you know, long ones, and I just made a frame with these with some C-clamps and clamped a frame together and stitched the piece of leather, laced it basically to the canvas twill tape so that it stayed stable for the duration of the time that it took me to stitch that. So that's kind of my process on how I did that. And this bag, if you're just seeing it for the first time, this was a 4-year project. I started it in 2018, and I did the 2 side panels first and then did the long panel. So I did this in 2018 and into 2019. And then this panel is dated 2020. It's down here in some lighter colored beads. So I just commemorated the process, and there were a couple of significant events that happened in that year. So I did this one in mostly 2020, probably into 2021. And then once I finished those, I did these long top and end pieces, and I finished the whole thing in 2022. And I was working at the time, same job I'm still working at the bank. I wasn't working when I started it, but I soon after got the job at the bank. So this was my mostly weekend project. I would do some beading at night, but for me, I need really good light to do that. I used stronger reading glasses than what I stitch with, because I stitch also with a magnifier at stronger glasses. But I had to be here at the table where my lamps are so I could see everything. And sometimes at night, they're just, even though I've got great light here, just weird shadows, and my eyes were tired or too tired to do this. So a lot of this was done on weekends. So that's why, probably also why it was a 4-year project. So as I look around, I've just got some different beads here. The thread I used was this beading thread called Nimo. This comes on spools. You can get big cones or small spools that are half this size, but this is one of them that I used. I did condition the thread. I did have to use a thimble all the time. I had this leather thimble. You can see this is a well-worn thimble, because even though that brain tan leather compared to commercial leather is relatively easy to stitch through, there are some areas that are kind of tough, and you need to, yeah, there's a part of it right there that is tough. You need to be able to push through, so a thimble is very necessary for doing that. So beads come, if you're not familiar with it, on either hanks or loose. Just have some different colors here. Here's a hank of beads. That's one hank of beads, separate threads tied at the top. And generally what I'll do is take them off of here. I just snip at the lower loop, holding it right over one of those little lids, and snip, and then they'll fall off of there. Or they're sold by the ounce, and then I've just got some of the loose ones in jars. And there is also, as far as thread goes, there is what's called artificial sinew. It's a waxed material. I'm not sure what it's made out of, but this splits similar to, you can split it down fairly finely. You can see it's a lot of fibers that are waxed together. So you can just split that down to the fineness that you need and use that. I used that for many years. I would use artificial sinew for, and because it starts out pretty thick, it's good for stitching seams. I probably stitched these. Yeah, I did. Stitch these gloves with artificial sinew. And it ends up, it's similar in color to the leather, so it ends up kind of hiding itself in the leather. So it's very strong, so it's good for sewing seams with bigger seams in leather. So that's my beadwork technique. The 2 needle and 1 needle applique. I also have a little neck bag here that I didn't show you in that other. This hangs with some rosaries that I have, but the cording, I made that. That's just a twisted cord. And this is a different technique of beadwork here. You can see there are individual like lanes of beads, and they're loose. They have kind of a hump shape to them. This is called lane stitch, or sometimes called lazy stitch. Totally different technique, where the only lines you have drawn are some sort of lines to keep the stripes basically straight, and you bring your needle up on that line, thread on enough beads to make the little hump, and go back down, come up next to it, come back, go back and forth. So the only attachment points are at the beginning and end of each little lane. Now in the olden days, and I might have done this. I'm looking to see if I can see threads on the back. I do see threads on the back. But in the olden days, and you can do this with brain tan leather, you can poke your needle through just part of the leather and you wouldn't even see the stitches on the back. That's how a lot of moccasins were done. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat today. It's allergy season. But anyway, in the olden days, moccasins especially were done with that technique, because on the inside of a piece of footwear, you didn't want knots or threads rubbing against your feet. That would abrade them and make them loosen faster, but also abrade your foot too. So you can do that with brain tan leather. You can bury your thread in the thickness of the leather. And then this has obviously a kind of a cool little zipper-like edging technique to it, and twisted fringe in the twisted cord. So three different 1 needle applique, 2 needle applique, and lane stitch with the beadwork. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little more about that. If you have any more specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will see you back in the stitching chair for some closing remarks. I hope you liked that. I hope you enjoyed that. I think it's always fun to see different crafts or hobbies that people have and know what it takes to do them, because it's generally a lot more time consuming and involved than any of us have any clue about. So yeah, that's my beadwork in a little more depth. I hope you enjoyed it. So with that, I just will come to I want to remind you of the giveaway. If you would like to receive that Ackworth Friendship Book chart, please leave a comment below using the word friendship. And like I said, I'll do the random comment picker and pick that before the next video in about 3 weeks. Any other plans I have are just to finish up that project for my friend that I've been working on, and hopefully put some more stitches into Hannah Whitaker, and reacquaint myself with some of my other projects that I haven't been able to touch for a while I've been otherwise engaged with other projects. Then April 25th is the Stitch With Me Day for those of you who are coming. If you want to bring finished pieces, you know, we all love to look at the stuff that each one does. We've got a place that we can display that. Bring what you would like to share. Food and drink are provided. Lunch, you're on your own. Plenty of options here in town. But that is April 25th. Hopefully, I will come back to you right before that. Otherwise, it would have to be after that, and it would really lengthen out the time between videos. So I'm hoping to get back here before the 25th, though. So with that, let's wind down. So still a lot happening in the world that is not so great. A lot of people in challenging situations, and those of us who are observers, that becomes a challenge too. And it's hard to know how we can best be of assistance if we can't be right in the middle of stuff where, unfortunately, danger is. So I think it's always helpful for us to find as much peace as we can in our own lives, because when we are peaceful in our own lives, that energy is directed out into the world. Be kind. Kindness matters. I was thinking about that Jewel song, Only Kindness Matters. It really does. It really does. It's important. So I'm going to leave you as I regularly do with the metta prayer that was as taught to me by my yoga instructor, Nancy. So first of all, let's take some deep breaths. Settle into your body. You can close your eyes if you want. Mine automatically drift closed when I'm trying to become more settled. I can feel my breath in and out through my nose, and I just kind of relax and let the chair do its work and support me rather than be tense in my body. May we be at peace. May our hearts remain open. May we know the beauty of our own true spirit. May we be healed. And may we be a source of healing in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you for spending time with me today. I always enjoy this time we have together, the sharing with you, and love reading your comments. And I look forward to seeing you again. Namaste, everyone. Bye-bye.